Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. You'll recall that a few weeks ago, I think just 2 weeks ago actually, I visited the Farscape subreddit, and one of the prompts, or rather posts from that subreddit, talked about any episodes that that people within that community would have wanted to see. And well, let's just say that idea has kind of struck a chord with me, and it is one that I now want to explore, even if just a little bit. And the thing is, when I was thinking about what I would want from a what I would want from a Farscape episode, like if I were to make my own one-off, I still wanted it to fit within the broader narrative of Farscape, and so started thinking, well, where would it actually take place, or when would it actually take place? And as I was considering that contextual information, I thought that it would be more interesting to actually develop that. So in that spirit, this is what I'll be doing over the course of this video, talking about the hypothetical fifth season that Farscape would have had, or was slated to have until it was unceremoniously put to an end after the fourth. Now, admittedly, the fifth season did happen to some extent, as in on one hand, the Peacekeeper Wars miniseries concluded the story arc of the brewing Cold War between the Peacekeepers and the Scarrans, and then there were after the end comics that talked about that covered various other plots, such as visiting Hyneria, maybe even the Nebari. I'm not exactly sure. I just know that they exist, and I just know that they touch upon some stuff. So for the purposes of this video, I am basically going to be looking at these dropped plot lines, so to speak, and really exploring what I think season 5 would have done or ought to have done. And I'm gonna start right where season 4 left off with. Oh, by the way, this video is going to be full of spoilers if you haven't figured out already. So I suggest you actually watch Farscape before you watch this video. Okay. Assuming you're still here, you either don't care about spoilers, or they are no longer an issue for you. So I'll just continue, and I'm gonna start right where season 4 left off, with with Crichton and Aaron being being disintegrated by whatever alien weapon that is, whatever alien weapon did that to them. And the fifth season would start basically the same way the Peacekeeper Wars started, with Rygel picking up all the various pieces of Crichton and Aaron, so that the crew of the Moya could at least put those pieces together. And as that is happening, Dargo would lead an investigation team in order to figure out who did this to his friends. Because Dargo, while I very much respect his character, I really find him to be underutilized throughout most of the series, and even in the later segments of it, when he technically became the captain of Moya, he was still people still worked around him, and he didn't really have any particular any interesting storylines given to him. All he had were moments where he had to keep his anger in check because Lux and Hyper Rage, that kind of that kind of stuff. I instead wanted to give him more things to do, because keep in mind he was actually a general, and therefore he would have some knowledge of command, of logistics, of and really of combat. Like he is involved in action scenes, so to that end, We know that he can, but I also want to showcase him. Showcasing his. I also want to show him displaying his operational knowledge and figuring out what his opponents are trying to do or would have to be doing, and then counteract those strategies. So I'll say the two-parter opening of the 5th season would basically be Dargo leading this investigation into finding the perpetrators of the attack on Crichton and Aaron, and hopefully figuring out a way to reverse what was done to them. Suffice it to say, he manages to do so. They find the aliens. They also find that the aliens have a way to reverse the damage that they did, which they employ, and then which they employ to resurrect Crichton and Aaron. And after they get resurrected, they are hit with one final question: who put them up to it? Who made them attack? Who made them attack John Crichton? And the answer to that question is Maldus. Maldus was a reoccurring foe within the 1st season, and he was more in touch with more from the paranormal sphere of Farscape, a sphere which was more heavily explored in the first half of the series than the second. And I think it is one that can return to prominence within this season, because by now, with with knowledge of wormholes and of that larger scale space manipulation, Crichton now has ways to combat threats like that, first of all, and second of all, dealing with threats like that is a good way for him to hone in his knowledge and really allow the audience a good showcase of what kind of impact that kind of thing would, the wormhole knowledge and really wormhole technologies would actually be capable of inflicting. There have been some clues regarding that throughout the series that we got, but getting something more concrete in the 5th season would very much be worth the price of admission. And I imagine most of the filler episodes of this season would very much be focused on that. John trying to hone in his abilities to utilize wormholes, maybe under the guidance of Stark. That could also potentially lead to some of the filler leading into the really kind of crazy outcomes that were they very much characterize the the first half of the show, but primarily the 1st season, where Crichton's perspective in particular was very much bent and twisted by all of the new possibilities and dangers that were that he was presented with. After a few episodes of that, we would get into I think it makes sense to then get another longer running, maybe a 2 or a 3-parter, focusing on the Nebari. Then, because the Nebari have been established to be a technologically advanced and also very influential species, perhaps not on par with the Scarrans and the Peacekeepers, but they do have a civilization that could potentially rival them, and or that could otherwise have a disproportionate amount of influence on the the rest of civilization. However, throughout the series, if I recall correctly, they were busy stomping out a rebellion. It was basically Puritans against more libertine folk, if I recall correctly. So this 3-parter would focus upon this particular this particular threat, and upon how the Nebari, while they may be outclassed by the by the wormhole capabilities that that the Moya crew has, they may still nevertheless possess an organizational advantage that would allow them to stay one step ahead throughout most of this trilogy. After a while, however, the bad guys of this conflict would still lose, and thereby leaving Nebari or the world of the Nebari to rebuild and really reestablish themselves. It would not be like instant peace and prosperity, but it would be a start in that direction. Once that is dealt with, there could potentially be a few more filler episodes, maybe two more. Then we visit once again. Then we return to Jewel. Because I very much find myself missing her, and I think visiting her in her in her new situation would do this show a world of good. Also, it would benefit Dargo's development, because, as I've said, the idea of Dargo is that he would be more level-headed, or that he would adopt more of a cold fury, something that would keep him going, something that would keep him more continually motivated to accomplish a variety of goals. And I think having those two reunite would very much be worth it. Once that occurs, we can we'll jump back into into a parallel with the Peacekeeper Wars, where where Crichton picks up one of the leaders of the group Jewel was left with, and present him to the Scarran Emperor, so they can work out some kind of negotiation strategy when they end up facing against the Peacekeepers. You then know that there's that at that appointment there is an action sequence that that takes place, and really that is what the episode would or rather that is what these series of episodes would focus upon. First of all, the political power play that the Moya crew would try to get through with the Scarrans, and also the assessment that the Scarrans themselves would make with regards to their situation, and the fact that how to most effectively deal with both the Moya crew and the looming Peacekeeper threat. Ultimately, they would still decide to lead with violence, and they would still and which would require the Moya crew to break out of their facility, and therefore leave the storyline of the Scarran Peacekeeper Cold War still in a little bit of a limbo, at least for this point at the middle of the season. By the way, something I haven't really talked about is that within this iteration of the series, Rygel still ends up pregnant. After he collects all the pieces of Aaron and Crichton, I would imagine that one of those pieces would still be, I imagine that one of those pieces would potentially be one or several of the pieces could potentially be the baby itself, which would integrate within Rygel somehow, and therefore leave him as the carrier parent, so to speak, for a little while. Up until past this segment of the Cold War storyline, where after the or after they break out of the out of Scarran containment, the Moya crew finally decides to make that transplant. And finally decides to transplant John and Aaron's baby from from Rygel to Aaron. Then we go through a few more filler episodes, maybe maybe two more. Potentially one where we also discuss what Jules' ultimate fate will be if she ends up having one, and then the next storyline that I think would be worth wrapping up is actually revolves around Hyneria, because and I'm directly talking about wrapping up Rygel's storyline, because within the first half of the first season, if I recall correctly, it was established that he used to be the Dominar of Hyneria, aka the the main ruler of his planet, only to then get deposed by his brother, if I recall correctly, who then also sells him off to the Peacekeepers. And over the course of the series, it has been established that his brother, Bashan, if I recall his name correctly, ends up falling in disfavor. And I imagine that after Bashan's fall from grace, Hyneria itself could be going through some kind of civil war for various between various contenders for the Dominar title. And I think that Rygel would want to insert himself within this conflict in order to regain his throne. That could result in another two-parter, though arguably one that has more of a comedic bent because reasons. By the end of which however, I don't really think that Rygel would get his crown, so to speak, again by the by the end of the episode. Rather, I imagine Hyneria itself potentially adopting a more republican model of governance, with with something akin to a with a president, for example, or that person could still be called Dominar, but but the position would no longer be inherited; it would be appointed via election, for instance. And Rygel would be there to. Rygel, I think, would be there to witness it. Potentially be disappointed over the outcome, but But one thing that has been established about him to some degree is that while he may not have been the best ruler, over the course of the series, at least, he has he will have been shown to at least have some level of sympathy and compassion, and therefore he would recognize that. That while this outcome isn't the one he would have wanted, it is still the one that benefits his people the most. So therefore, it is an outcome that he finds himself willing to acknowledge and respect. So yeah, so that's it with that particular storyline. And then I imagine the show would go through one final confrontation with Maldus in whatever form that would take. One where he in some way, to some extent, potentially targets everyone everyone on Moya, trying to deconstruct their personalities, maybe turn them against Crichton, so that he can weaponize them against him, because now that he has wormhole tech, he has Crichton stands is more of a threat to Maldus, but I imagine that ultimately the crew of Moya would still stand strong against him, and that would allow Crichton the ultimate victory over Maldus to some extent. And by ultimate victory, I think that would mean sealing him away, because Maldus can't really be killed off permanently. It has been has been established in on various occasions in his previous appearances in Farscape. So I really think sealing him away, and thereby taking away any possibility he has of remaining a menace within the series' future is really the best. That Moya's crew can really hope to accomplish. And it is a task that I think Crichton is very willing to rise to the challenge of. And once that is concluded, I think we can symbolically say that that Crichton's ability with wormhole technologies will have is now strong enough that he can present a meaningful challenge and a meaningful resolution to the to the main to the main story of Farscape, which at this point within the series at least is the Scarran Peacekeeper civil war. And therefore the final episodes will basically be a long form presentation, and by last episodes I mean last 3 episodes. So because I want this conclusion of the series to be a 3-parter, and within this 3-parter we'll get to see basically the climax of the Peacekeeper Wars, the birth of John and Erin's son, Dargo's death, John's demonstration against the united Scarran and Peacekeeper fleets. Then their decision to agree on a peace deal. Then then John potentially recovering, and ending with the final episode being basically a final resolution for for everyone, where they mourn their fallen, and talk about what it is that they intend to do, in the future. Not necessarily in a happily ever after, but more in the sense of but more such as to allow them to have the peaceful life that they would have wanted to have, or whatever fulfilling life they see them, so they would choose to have. I would not be surprised if a lot of them would choose to stay on Moya, because that is where they found each other, where they find a family, and where it is that they are where it is that they found something to call their own. But still, I imagine there are some characters who would be who would still be driven away, or who would want to move away, because like Scorpius, for example, the reasons why he would have been on Moya are no longer applicable, because by the last episode, it has been made quite clear by the Scarrans that they no longer intend to pursue such weapons, or weapons based on wormholes, which was basically what Scorpius was afraid of. And yeah, that's basically it. That is basically my pitch for what season 5 would be, with a little bit of a ramble thrown in, because this video was very much off the cuff. Like I just put up my phone and started talking. Nevertheless, I did hope you still enjoyed it. If you have, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the Farscape comics that I've already mentioned, or the Peacekeeper Wars, or the series more broadly, the concept of a season 5, my iteration of season 5, well, you can talk about that and many more in the comment section of this video. And if you would like to see when my next video gets released, well then, please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell, or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I primarily talk about the print medium and various appearances within. So if that sounds like something that you are curious about, either the print medium or my impressions of it, well, you can go ahead and check it out in the description down below. Right next to my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. If you find yourself uninterested by my thoughts on the print medium or any works therein, well, then I suggest you stay on this channel where I talk a lot about television and cinema. Sometimes it's pitch videos like this one, but most of the times it's either reviews or overviews. I even have one on Farscape, which you might be interested in checking out. Or technically two, if a countdown of the best episodes also counts towards an overview. Aside from that, I also cover gaming. I also cover philosophy occasionally, primarily political philosophy, and other ramblings. So if any of that sounds like it could be up your alley, then I suggest you go for my backlog and check it out. If, however, you find none of what I've said to really capture your interest or your curiosity, well, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was it for me. So until next time, I have been the One Take Man.